All right, so as we get some council members back on the dais, I just want to thank everyone for joining us today. Today's date is May 23rd, 2023. We had a lightning strike a little while ago, so if we're not live at the moment, we will have it up the following day. And then with that, I will call this workshop to order. All right, so first up is going to be the invocation. And so with that, I guess we'll stand and take a breath together. How about that? All right. Councilman Bagby?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, so we'll get into the workshop, and there is one agenda item on here, is the fiscal year 2024 budget. And I'm assuming, Crystal, are you taking this away?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and welcome, council members. Happy to see you this evening. First, I'd like to start by, I have this little kind of a cheat sheet here that I wanted to hand out to some people. It's just a little reminder, budget workshop. We're trying to balance revenues with our expenses. And then I'm going to talk about the backside of this from here.
I'm glad you kept your word and said you were going to bring this.
No, this is last year. This is our current year. So this is kind of like a point of reference so that you always have this in front of you. I just wanted to, so when we charge fees, if we think it's going to be a very general public benefit, then we tend to go with taxes. If we think it's more of an individual benefit, it's more user fees. Up here at the top, we have our FY23 operating expenses. This is from our currently adopted budget. I excluded the capital outlays because they really make things skewed. So, and the operating tend to be pretty much the same year over year. And then down below there, you see the our revenue sources that are covering these operating expenses. The green things are things that we have a little more control over. The gray things are a little bit harder to move and budge. So, for example, we have control over our ad valorem up to the city charter's amount of 2 mils. We have a lot of leeway over user fees and licenses and permit fees. The other items, sales and use taxes, those are passed by referendum, and some of those are just shared from the state of Florida, so we don't quite have as much influence over those. So there you go. The green stuff we have a lot more influence over, the gray stuff less influence. And so now you have this little cheat sheet in front of you. So with that, we'll dive into the 2024 budget workshop. This worked a minute ago. Let me try on this side. All right, so just a little humor to start the meeting, and you know, this is why we come and we have these budget workshops. We want to make sure that we can keep the light on at the end of the tunnel. Here's our budget process. So we started in January with the visioning session. This year, our next up is the operational budget workshop, May 23rd. After this, in July, we will come together again and look at the whole picture, including the capital budget on July 11th. At the July 17th meeting, we must adopt our tentative millage rate and certify that to the property appraiser. And then in September, we will be adopting the budget at 2 public hearings. The next slide is very similar. It shows another view of the timeline, but this includes the timing on when you do the city manager evaluation. Just a very short synopsis of our strategic planning review. We met in January to discuss our current strategic plan and to talk about any updates or movements we'd like to do in that plan. We have 3 kinds of priorities in our strategic plan: critical, important, and desirable. And here are the top council objectives, just to keep these fresh in our minds. One of the critical priorities was offer livable wages and benefits to staff, and work with stakeholders to, I guess we're really envisioning a city center, right, as the place we're at right now. And then we have some more important priorities on this list. Completing the Crosstown Connector, beachfront acquisition, undergrounding, and so forth. The rest of the items on here are very capital in nature and not so much operating in nature. The next is our 6 pillars within our city, our strategic goals. We always want to be thinking about financial sustainability, while we're also aiming towards green, sustainable environments, improving mobility and connectivity, and enhanced quality of life and safety for families. So with that, this evening, I wanted to focus a little bit around the background and the revenue sources for our revenues. I received the preliminary data from the property appraiser late last week. Our taxable property values have risen from $6.9 billion to $7.9 billion. Now keep in mind that's the taxable property values. It's not the fair market values. So here's just a little look at who are our taxpayers. I have a couple demographics in here from the Census Bureau's quick looks. 17% are under the age of 18, 18% are over the age of 65. Okaloosa County is one of the youngest counties in the state of Florida. 43% of Destin residents hold a bachelor's degree or higher, and the median household income this year is just over $81,000 a year. So I've taken all of the parcels in the city and I divided all 16,000 parcels into these 3 groups. One is the homesteaded group, and then we have, I'm calling them other residential. So these could be rentals, short or long-term, and second homes. And then just over approximately 9% of the parcels are designated as non-residential, something other than residential. So down below in the corner here, you actually see the parcel count on how I came up to these figures. So if we take a little deeper dive into the homesteaded properties, here we have a bar chart that shows in the first column is ones that have a taxable value of $0 to $200,000. Now, when a property appraiser comes up with a taxable property value, he has a few things. Some of these properties have a lot of different exemptions on them. You can have the all of these have the homestead exemption. Some of them also might have veteran exemptions, widow exemptions, disabled exemptions. There are a lot of different exemptions that you could have that would bring your taxable property value down low. As you can see, so these are in 2 increments of $200,000. So the first increment is up to $200,000, the second increment is $200,000 to $400,000, the third is $400,000 to $600,000, and then the last is over $600,000 in taxable value. Again, these are just the homesteaded properties. So that would make 40, 50, that's nearly 80% of our homesteaded properties have a taxable value under $400,000. So now here's a broader vision of the whole city, all 16,055 parcels in the city. Down below, on the bottom of the range, so we still have these $200,000 increments for all of the properties. The darkest color at the bottom of these bar charts, those are what I was calling the other residential properties. The very light color above that is the next largest group. Those are the homesteaded properties. And at the very top, the dark green, those are the non-residential parcels. So again, even looking at it from this perspective, 78% of all Destin properties have a taxable value under $600,000. So the average taxable value of a parcel is $486,000. Because most of those values are down on the low end, the median comes to $332,000. So with those median and average taxable values in mind, here's a little look at our at millage rates at different rates. So if your property taxable value was $400,000, if we maintain a millage rate of 1.615, most of your homeowners would pay $646 this next year, or less. I have more details on this on the next page. If we were to increase it, not saying that we would, but if we were to increase it or decrease it for that $400,000 valued property, that would be a change of $40. But down below at the bottom of this slide, so our taxable value right now, $7.9 billion. We have to multiply that by a millage rate. So if we multiplied that by 1.615, we could take 95% of that to budget that, because you have to consider a large number of residents will take the 4% discount. And then there might be a 1% delinquency rate. So that's why we budget 95%. So if we stayed with the 1.615, that would bring in just over $12 million. If we jumped it up to 1.71, that would bring it to 12.9. And I probably should have gone a tenth lower as well, but you get the idea. The difference is in 1/10 of a mil for the city, it would be $753,000. So now here are, again, we've got our three different groupings: homesteaded, other residential, and non-residential. The taxable values are taken straight out of the property appraiser's database. And putting this together at an ad valorem of 1.615, and then dividing by that number of parcels, you can see what the average parcel in that type would pay for the next year. So if it's a homesteaded property, the average would be $478 for the year. And if it was an other residential, $860, or if it was a non-residential unit, it would be $705.
Crystal?
Yes.
Can I interrupt you real quick for a question?
Yes, and feel free to ask me questions
Awesome.
during this, absolutely.
On this beautiful handout you gave us, what, just quick look, why are ad valorem going down if the values are nearly $1 million more?
Actually, that slide is, what does it, let's see.
This is 12.294, but this is 12.1.
Okay, so this slide has, includes, let's see, what does this slide include? I'm just double checking here, because that was our 2023.
This graph on this said last year's budget, we had ad valorem of 12.294.
Oh, it includes, you know what, this includes the TIF revenues that come
Okay.
into the CRAs, which is, it's basically the county puts additional tax revenues into our two CRAs. So yeah, this includes the TIF money because we have operating expenses
Okay. Thank
those
you.
cover.
Appreciate it.
Yes. Very good question, thank you.
The
Yes.
one point I want to make is the values increased 13.8%,
Correct.
okay? So our revenue increases 13.8% if we keep the millage flat,
That's correct.
which is why the rollback rate would be basically an 18% decrease to 1.4186.
That's
okay?
correct.
Just want to make
And
sure we're all operating.
I put that on the slide, right? Yes, I did. Yes. 1.4186, that's
Yeah,
correct.
Yeah.
So our
No,
rollback
I
rate
always-
would be,
Yeah, the
yes.
rollback rate's good. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, very good, very good. Let's just make sure everybody sees where that is. Is the, here we are. Nope. I saw a red dot for a second. Oh, it's up top. I must be blind. My eyes are going. Yeah, the number is at the top. So there you see our rollback rate. So this is the proposed operating budget. I like to show it in a couple different ways. First, in a pie format, just so that you can see where most of the money of the city is going. General government, culture and recreation, and public safety are the largest pieces of pie, and then debt service. Transportation, physical environment, that's our stormwaters and our cemeteries. Still, a lot of cemetery maintenance costs are, for better or for worse, they're kind of tucked into culture and recreation because it's the grounds people that maintain the cemetery. I'm working on it. We're slowly improving our accounting system to get those costs where they really belong. The other one is physical environment also includes the stormwater systems. And I think if you talk to our stormwater people, they'll say there's a lot of room for improvement. We have some pipes that are crumbling, and we have a lot of swales that have been filled in. So we'd like to beef up our stormwater improvement plan, but we're going to talk a lot more about that at the capital project workshop. So this is what the ad valorem pays for right now, the way we have things set up. So the ad valorem that we collect, so we have a lot of money that comes in from the state, like the municipal sharing tax. We use most of that money to cover our general government expenses. So the ad valorem taxes, this is mostly what they cover: culture, recreation, public safety. And this is where we raise our additional funds for capital outlays, such as renewal and replacement program and any other additional capital projects. That, and we also have, anytime, we go after grants as much as we can as well to help us with those capital outlays. So this is what a typical household would pay, a homesteaded home would pay. This is how their money would be allocated out to the different major governmental activities, with culture and recreation being the top priority. And then this is how it breaks down in number format. So we've got covered by ad valorem column and a covered by other sources. So the ad valorem we're looking at this year is 12.1 million and 13.3 million from other sources. So for our operating, we're looking at 25 million. Some of the largest increases, well, we'll get to the, as we just mentioned, ad valorem, if we keep it at 1.61, that would be a 13% increase. Charges for services, by the way, we have changed a lot of the fees, including licenses and permits and charges for services. We've increased a lot of those rates, 10 to 30%, depending on if it was 10% for most of the permits and 30% for some parking in certain areas. This is a slide that just gives us the major increases. Please keep in mind the parking fees go to a parking fund and they're restricted for addressing parking issues. Building permit fees are also in accordance with Florida statute. Those stay in the building fund to fund the building inspector, building officials, our building official, building inspectors, and enforcement of Florida Building Code. And then this is how the funds would break out between, this is the city's portion, we're not including the county's portion in here. How much of that would go into the general fund versus how much is going into the two CRAs in accordance with our agreements with the county and our CRA agreements. So from this, you can also see that the largest increase in property values did happen in the town center CRA district, and the second highest in the Harbor CRA district. So this is how we're proposing to spend the money next year. Again, you can see the pie chart here with a lot of those funds going to debt service. That just increases each year in accordance with our debt covenants with our bankers. Then we have general government, culture and recreation, and public safety. So it's, it's kind of nice to see what your city is spending their money on, where they're spending it. The next slide shows the graph comparison of FY23, which is where we are now, compared to where we could be headed in FY24. And you'll see here that the largest increases are in culture and recreation is definitely by far the largest increase. We're asking for additional personnel to help cover the new parks that are coming online. For example, the Captain Royal Melvin Park, which I believe they had a soft opening this week. Yes? Almost there? Yes, it is. Okay, it's open for real now. And then we are expanding, as you know, at Crystal Beach, the Tarpon access and the Crystal Beach access. Public safety is also going up. The largest increase there is the part-time salaries for the crossing guards, and then also the sheriff's contract is also increasing. The largest increase to the sheriff's contract was they're estimating an additional $70,000 this coming year towards their fuel costs.
Would the lifeguards be under public safety as well?
They are, but we're not assuming an increase at this time.
No, just the 100, yep.
It's staying at 100. We're hoping that the TDC and or the county can come in to help them.
Crystal, you brought up the personnel for the new parks. Is that also being offset somewhere with the contributions from TDC for sharing those people?
Yes, the TDC, in the past years, they were giving us about $458,000 a year towards operating all of those beach or waterfront parks. This year it'll be $700,000, but that's I'm calling it our 12.5% money. So yes, that budget is increased to $700,000. So here's just another view of the budget. This is how it breaks down between salaries, benefits, contracts, operations, and everything else. As you can see, salaries plus benefits is nearly 50% of our operating budget. We still do a lot with contracted labor. But we've been doing less as we've been filling our positions and hiring more full-time staff. We've been doing more in-house and less in the contracted labor. So here again is a comparison last year compared to what we're proposing for this coming year. The blue, the shorter ones are last year, or the current year that we're in, FY23, and the green is what we're proposing for next year. And Jamie Dittmer will come on up here and talk to everybody about the salaries and benefits. Oh, Here, one more, just a little slide. I love this. I used to share this at all my, when I used to teach in Central Asia, they just love this, that, you know, the speed limit by day can just be reasonable and prudent. So I like to preach that when we talk about budgeting and spending money, reasonable and prudent. Come on up, Jamie.
Hello. Okay, so this slide is just going over per policy, how we determine our COLA increases every year. So this year, we're budgeting for about 5%. And, oh, sorry, so this one I believe is March over March, or April over April, but we typically per policy go by June over June. So a couple more months for that. I should have brought my slides, or wore my better glasses. Okay, so we are asking for 5% COLA, or we factored in 5% cost of living increase this year, and then 4.5% merit increase. And then we're also asking for 10 new positions, and these are the positions that each of the department directors found were value added. Thank you. Okay, yes, value added to the city and also to their department. So the engineering department is wanting a new engineering site inspector, and that's really going to help them determine any issues throughout a project as opposed to finding out issues at the end of the project, which is more costly for everybody involved. So this will be a supportive position in the engineering department. The library is asking to convert one part-time position into a full-time position. That position for part-time librarians assistants has a very high turnover rate, and that's just kind of the nature of part-time positions. So to help with succession planning and to reduce the cost of turnover, we think it's the most beneficial to convert one of those positions to a full-time position. Code compliance, they are asking for 2 part-time and 1 full-time code compliance officers. They obviously have a high demand and are very busy, so they believe that these additional positions will help support the department. Recreation, as Crystal mentioned, they're asking for 2 full-time TDC maintenance technicians and then 2 full-time grounds maintenance technicians. And that's really just, they have a lot of area to cover, so that's really to help support that department and making sure that all of our parks are maintained.
Can I please ask one question?
Yeah.
I know that I went to each division and I asked questions. I see a position that's missing here that was requested, public information officer. I don't see that on here. She was asking for a position as well. Was that excluded?
We decided that it was more beneficial for her just to contract some services out as opposed to adding another full-time position. So we budgeted for that.
Okay.
Okay, and this I think is a super helpful slide. This really helps decide or show you where all of our staff is in the salary penetration range. So 40%, the 40 percentile is a very healthy space to be in whenever you're looking at where our employees on average fall in their pay range. So this is an average of all of them. Typically, as you're moving across and down the pay grades, as you get to senior management level, they typically are more further to the right of the pay scale just because we're compensating for experience. So we're at a healthy range. And this is including the 5% COLA increase. The 4% merit increase, what that will do is just help create some separation between our top performers. Okay, and this is our, just kind of for a breakdown with our personnel. This is 131 budgeted positions, and then we have 10 part-time vacancies and 8 full-time vacancies right now. This kind of shows you how that breaks down. And then this is just the total compensation, shows you with our salaries, total health benefits, retirement, FICA, workers' comp, and just overall total compensation. This is also budgeting for a 25% increase in health insurance premium. So we'll have a more accurate number in mid-June, but right now we're preparing for 25%. Any questions?
On the 25%, does that have anything to do with how many employees we have on staff, or is that just economical?
No, well, a 25% increase is to the actual premium. So if we have additional staff, the bill will go up.
Okay.
But it's really based off of just the number of
Everything
claims throughout the year. Yeah.
Jamie, do you recall the COLA merit we did this year, we finally approved?
So 2% COLA and 4% merit. That was last year, right?
And just so you know, the 4% merit averaged 3.28%. So, which is typical, but at least it's not 4%, so it's not like everybody gets a car. People actually, there is some separation there. And
I was
so,
assuming that was your public record request.
You know, what can I say?
Any other questions? I think I'm about to give,
So on the, for this incorporates the recommended positions,
yes.
okay? And so you have the salary or salary ranges for those recommended positions?
Yes.
How did you figure, I know how you figure somebody who's getting a salary right now. How did you figure for the positions that you're adding?
For the vacant positions, I did.
Well, they're not vacant, you're adding.
Well, I'm sorry, the wish list items.
Yeah.
I factored the minimum plus 9% plus 4%. That's how I budgeted that position for each pay grade.
Okay, so it could be a little more, not
It could, yeah.
negligible in the overall scheme.
What's the, unless I'm missing it, but I counted eight positions on that slide.
10.
One engineering, one convert, a library, 2 code compliance, and 4 recreation.
And one part-time code.
Oh, 2 pool, 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9 then, I guess.
10?
2, 3, 5, 7, 8, 9. Who am I missing?
2 part-time, 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
What's-
Oh, well, I'm converting a part-time to a full-time.
So it's kind of like a
Yeah.
2 or something?
So 9 total, I guess.
9, okay, gotcha. And then what was the, how do you come up with the 5% cost of living recommendation?
Oh, that's on this slide, right?
Oh, we're not there yet? Okay.
Nope, we just passed it.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
It's just,
Thank you.
Really, you're only increasing 7.5 FTE.
right, I didn't calculate the full FTE, I mean, because that can obviously go from 0 to 0.9. So typically, we budget for about 0.7, is that what you typically do? Yeah. So even if it is a 0.2 or 0.3, we still budget for the 0.7, just to give a little bit of space. All right, I think, back to you, Crystal.
Passing of the baton. All right, so there you have it. Just want to remind everybody also about some of these other general fund expenditures that we have. We do all the landscaping at the Maddie Kelly Arts Foundation, the park there. We also have rent subsidies, and we do repairs, and/or we do repairs at the Fishing Museum, Food for Thought, the Fishing Rodeo. And then we also make these additional contributions. In a lot of cities, for example, crossing guards, the school districts usually pay either the sheriff's office or their police department for special details for crossing guards, or they work with their PTAs to get the parents on board to do crossing. But right now, our staff are doing that. And then Economic Development Council, One Okaloosa, we give a submission to them every year, and I get my research details out of them. And then the Destin Fishing Rodeo, we give them a little bit of support each year for the Miss Destin.
And I'm just going to throw in there, I was at the last Economic Development Council. Florida Enterprise seems like that's going to be shutting down to bare bones, so just letting everyone know that it'll be even that more important that we keep the local chapter strong, because the state's basically turning that over to the regional level.
Crystal, I recall you saying last year about trying to do this to highlight these values and contributions, so thank you for doing it. Do you have the Maddie Kelly landscaping? Is that something you're still working on, or is that, is it
Oh,
not
no,
related?
we have an agreement to do their landscaping in perpetuity.
do we have that value dollar amount for that particular item there?
It's
or-
just over $30,000, and Lisa can give you all the detail of the labor hours and the fuel and everything, the costs that go into that.
Is that the big amphitheater area back there? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, we do maintain the sod and the major landscaping, and then they have another firm that does the beds, the flower beds.
Do you have any details on that?
No.
Okay. I would love to know about that deal that's in place or whatever, the history
That-
of it
that
or why
was,
we're doing it or whatever.
yeah, that's
Just
when
kinda
we
get some more
annexed-
information if I could.
It
Yeah,
was part
that's-
of their annexation agreement back when that property annexed in, and I'm sure we could provide that documentation if you wanted to look at it.
That's a good answer. Annexation?
And it was going to be a village, they were going to build a harvest village back there. So landscaping wasn't just going to be mowing that big pasture. Wasn't going to be just mowing that big pasture. I'm sure Mr. Destin can give you more of the details, but they had a very nice layout, and we did it, basically get them coming to the city. So.
Are you saying that what we're looking at now is not what we were originally thinking back then whenever we made that deal? Is that what you're meaning by
No, we
that,
were,
or-
I mean, the plan that was pitched was, probably wouldn't have cost as much in labor
Right.
and fuel, but, you know, trees would still have to be trimmed. But they had a lot more hardscape back there in the original plan, and that never quite came to fruition. Yeah.
I've talked to Demetrius, and they're going to, I don't want to give them a date, but they are working on their 25-year master plan, and they seem to be getting excited about whatever that plan may be. I think they're starting to turn over old design plans and start moving forward, kind of like what we're doing with a lot of our projects. So I just know that's out there. I don't know a timeline, but they are hopefully working towards whatever plan they pitched you guys back in the day.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, maybe a new plan. I mean, I might not, nobody else might not agree, but it might be something for further discussion in the future to talk about, because that's nearly an entire person that we're giving to them to manage that entire facility over there for landscaping, it seems like, for free. So it might have to be something to look at later, in my opinion, but thank you.
Yeah, I would just say, one of the reasons, I won't speak for anybody else that was up here when we did this, was to build that enclave possibility. You know, if we surrounded enough of these, and, you know, particularly between there and 98, to just kind of swallow up that enclave. I wasn't a big fan of the perpetuity thing. You know, I was more of a inclined 10 years, 15 years, you know, something. But, you know, when we make a decision like that, we and our subsequent followers, replacements, live with it. And so, I mean, that, you know, we could talk about it, but to reopen it would require their assent, and I doubt that we would get that.
For the 21,000 school crossing guard, I'm assuming that's just the elementary school?
Yeah, actually, the budget went up a bit, but, because it was $21,000 that was in the FY '23 budget, because our minimum wage has gone up. It's more than that now. It is a part-time position, so there are no benefits, just taxes. But, yeah.
But to the perpetuity of the other conversation, this is not a perpetuity with the school board. So is that something we've just agreed on, or is there any kind of historical
Yeah, I
information there?
haven't seen a paper contract on this one in particular.
Yeah, because
So
we
I
have the
can't speak to
largest
that.
elementary school in the county, and we don't even have a fifth grade.
Right,
So
and
I
I
don't-
I would just, I'm going to let somebody else speak more to the arrangement, but I would say, having worked for school districts and school boards, I know that they can be incredibly strapped for cash, so sometimes they're not able to cover these things, so, but I really can't speak to this agreement and how it got into place or for how long or.
So as they build, because they plan on building out these, is that impact fees? Or are they exempt from impact fees being a school board on their land?
So there's this thing called concurrency that's at the county level. It's the level of services set at the county level. So when when a developer comes in to add more residential units within the city of Destin, they're going to come to our city and pay some like road impact fees and some park impact fees, but they're also going to talk to the county, and they would, some of those funds would be channeled back in for the school board, the
Thank you.
Okaloosa
I might
County
be
School
wrong,
Board.
and Lance or Kyle can mention it, but I think last time I asked about the same thing, it has something to do with the fields, and school board lets us, there's some deal maybe,
Agreement.
or is that completely off about using their fields,
Yeah, we have,
helping them out?
my understanding, as far as the crossing guard goes, is that, I mean, it predates me. There was a deal struck years and years ago. I think it was just the city coming to the aid of the school because they didn't want their kids crossing the street. They couldn't get the people out there. But I don't believe, and I'll double check, I don't believe that's reflected in our interlocal agreement for the field use.
Thank you.
Good questions.
You know, while we're talking about this, there are a lot of other entities that either we give them a reduced rate. The high school's a good example for the use of the fields, bringing up the fields. So we're very generous with people's tax money, and this only captures a portion of it. Because what we lose or don't get or give back or discount or whatever, also, when we give free parking for events, multiple events, which is fine, but there's a cost to doing every one of those that isn't captured on this sheet. And if we tried to capture all of them, we'd be over $100,000 probably.
Yeah, if I were able to fix our accounting system, I mean, a lot of companies, especially in the for-profit world, that's what you do, right? You got your sales charge, but then you also have a discount account so that you would account for the full amount. Just you would clearly show what you didn't charge them. The nonprofits do that as well. So this is a list of the operating grants that we feel very certain about coming this year. The TDC beach operations, $700,000 that I mentioned earlier, that one has already been approved. Correct, Jeffrey? I've seen the paperwork and the submittal, and I thought I saw a preliminary approval.
Yeah, I think it's been preliminarily approved. Of course, it has to be adopted with their 24 budget, just like ours.
Right. County Library Cooperative is very supportive. They have an amount that they share with all of the libraries in the county, including ours. FDEP, there's a 10-year agreement in place for them to continue supporting our park. Well, it's 10 years, or we might spend it faster. Then there's the DOT has been giving us, through an entity called Ferrovial, they've been giving us the median maintenance money, and our cost, because our service level is much higher on the medians, our cost is a lot higher, and that's why we didn't want their provider doing it. So we've taken it on, and we have our own provider doing this. FDOT also gives us some money for highway lighting, and they were giving us funding to maintain the traffic signals, but we were just funneling that straight back to the county because those are the guys who actually maintain those traffic signals on Highway 98. So now we cut ourselves out as the middleman, so they can just deal directly with each other. So now we're just down to the highway lighting subsidy.
You said 10-year agreement on the Leonard Destin Park.
That's correct.
When does that terminate?
That started in 2022 and goes through 2023. It's $981,000. Oh, right, you're right, 32. Oh, dear. No. Do what I mean, not what I say. There we go. So So that kind of ties up the operating side. In your packets, you have, in the format that you see at every council meeting, the year-to-date budget report, I have the 5-year projections. You've got a summary of all funds on the first page, and then on the next pages, you've got the summary by each individual different fund. The bottom line on the general fund, I want to point out 2 things. So at this point, because we have not yet discussed all of the capital projects and put them into our budget, I'm looking at adding $2.1 million to the fund balance, to the general fund balance. So that would be available to invest into capital projects. And again, we're going to talk a little bit about just, food for thought to prepare you for the next workshop, which I just realized is in July, not in June. Last year it was in June. But too many of us are traveling in June this year to do that. But also, I wanted to point out, if you flip over to the building fund, starting at the end of this next fiscal year, FY24, we just increased our building permit fees. We chose to increase them 10%. They are adding, what did you say, two more inspectors? No, 1 inspector and 1 vehicle for the team. And so I'm projecting that we'll have a negative fund balance at the end of FY24. So I have the general fund starting to put money in, and going forward into the future, that negative fund balance will be running about $550,000 a year. So that'll be something that we will need to address with those building permit fees, or you can choose to subsidize them with general fund money. But I would recommend building a little bit healthier balance and maybe giving one more little boost to those building permit fees. So I wanted to raise your attention to that.
About 2 or 3 months ago when we did increase it, did we ever come up with what we thought it was going to increase revenue by a year?
I'm trying to remember what our 3TP guy, I remember that he had 2 different projections. One was increasing them 10%, one was increasing them 30%. But I can just tell you now, this year, what I'm projecting that we're going to collect $980,000, and we just increased those permit fees by 10%. So next year, I'm projecting that we're going to collect just over $1 million. But it's still not going to cover all of their operating costs.
The 10%, so we increased our fees by an average of $90,000 a year at our 10%. We have a more accurate figure because some of them were 10%, some of them were more. As I look through it, it'd be good to know exactly what that figure is.
Yeah, when we just adopted the resolution of fees, the schedule of fees,
That's what I'm talking
it was
about.
just 10% for
Across the
building
board.
permit fees,
Just 10%.
just 10%,
So that's 90,000 more a year?
correct.
Okay.
Correct.
The capital overlay for this upcoming year, the 40,000, what is that for?
Oh, yes, and they need one vehicle.
Vehicle,
And
okay,
and
thank you.
because we have access to the state contracts, we can actually get a Ford F-150
Mm-hmm.
for about $40,000.
A
Aren't
hybrid
we lucky?
F-150?
Can you imagine? I know, right?
Our policy, we have to do our best to balance income and outgo.
From the building fund?
Yes, we're talking on the building fund right
This,
now.
the state rule is you have to show it in a separate fund, and you cannot have revenues, let's see, you cannot collect a fund balance over, I can't remember
We
what the
can't be
unreasonable.
over, I got
Yeah,
Right,
like
we can't be
10% or
over.
something.
But there isn't a rule on underfunding, so we can subsidize it if we choose to. But there's been a trend in the United States where a lot of cities have infrastructure that's a little bit outside of their reach because with all of these suburbs, right? So in order to help them maintain that existing infrastructure, they've increase building permit fees and development fees. So they're borrowing development money today to pay, which should be in the future, this road and stuff, to pay for infrastructure that they've already put into place. Maybe they've over-leveraged themselves a bit. So I think that the people behind the rule, the building fund rule, they're trying to stop cities from using this as a revenue fund.
Right.
And they want it to be a,
Well, I got
cover
that.
itself fund.
I'm not talking the state.
Yeah,
We have a stated policy that our objective is to get these funds as close to matching as possible with revenues and expenditures.
that's true.
And so, if 10% is only 90,000 and we're going to be going forward subsidizing this thing to $500,000, we're not close to that.
That's
I don't know,
correct.
We're not meeting our stated policy.
That's correct.
So we either need to get close to our policy or change our policy.
Right.
Okay.
Were we allowed to go more than 10?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, our consultant recommended, he was recommending 30%. I think there was maybe a calculation error or something in his spreadsheet, so maybe that kind of threw everybody off at that meeting to make us all think that 10% would have been enough. But I didn't catch it soon enough, so I think that was the impression that the council was left with at that meeting, was that 10% would be adequate. But as you can see, as I recalculate the numbers, it's not going to be adequate.
So technically another 5% would make it zero out
For 1 year,
for 1 year, yeah.
So where are
No.
we now on our projection? Are we going to bring in 938,000?
that is, yes. So that takes into our year-to-date, what we've brought in, and it assumes that we're going to bring in 95% of what we brought in last year at this time. So it's basically the bulk of it, the lion's share of that number is what we've already brought in to date, year-to-date.
So that's not a full year's worth, though, is it?
Correct. That was through May 13th was the last time I drew down all the numbers.
Okay, but sorry, go ahead.
I'm just going to point out, we need to have a year under our belt to really understand what we're bringing in. And it's also predicated on how many permits you do, whether it's a year up or a year down. And so, I'm still interested to see what we produce in excess for the new fees for a year, and then we have a better idea and have our arms around what it is we're doing.
And then-
Yeah, because my question is, when you do projections, you do it through the end of the year. You
That's
don't
correct.
do as year-to-date.
That's correct. But I
So-
use year-to-date as my base, and I
Right.
have projected out for June, July, August, September, October,
Right.
June, July, August, September, September.
historic
Based
data.
on historical data.
Right. So we haven't actually brought in 938. That's what you're saying we're going to bring in.
Correct, correct.
Given the pace of building, historic pace of building this
Right.
year. Okay, I just want to make sure.
And then my last question on the expense side is the building department paying the city rent and exponential?
That would
Doing
be
all-
ideal. Normally, a building fund would pay some sort of overhead back to the general and administrative overhead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that would help us.
10%.
Allow us
It's
to.
pretty typical, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And we're not right now?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, this fund is really new. I just started it when I came in.
Gotcha, yeah, I learned that at EMO 2 class.
Good. Let's see. What else do we have here? So preparing for the June 2023. Well, before I get into the future and the capital improvement stuff, I also wanted to bring your attention to, I know I didn't want to put thousands of numbers in front of everybody and talk ad nauseum about this increase over that increase, but this is a report from our accounting system. It shows our current year actuals, year-to-date actuals in one column, and it shows this projection that I've made all the summaries off of in the last column, and the percent of change from our current year budget to what I'm proposing for next year's budget. And then it goes back as 3 years' worth of historicals. I'm just going to give you a little warning. Take those 3 years of historicals with a little tiny grain of salt, because Munis has a lot of oddities in it, and there are a lot of accounts that I've inactivated to stop people from using them. And when you do things like that, then they don't show up in your totals. So just be aware, it's not perfect. Last year financials isn't going to match out exactly 100% to our audited financials for that reason. Also, there's a different layout in the accounting software. For some reason, they don't have canned reports that fit how we report nationwide. But you have this in your packet, so you have some historical data you can compare year over year. I like to just look at the fund totals by department, just to look for reasonableness. And also, if you're wondering, well, why do they want $200,000 for professional services in the community development department next year? If you're wondering a question like that, there's one more report in your packet that was sent to you all, and this is called the Budget Details Report. So when people were entering budget, if they had any details, they would list out exactly who they're hiring and what they're hiring them for and what their estimated rate is. If they're traveling, it would tell exactly which conferences they feel is necessary, how many people they want to send to those conferences, and so forth. So you have all of these details at your fingertips if you want to dive into more details. And so we have more time to talk about all of these details and refine as you like. So now, getting back to, yes. Oh, those are revenues. Revenues are shown as credits in the accounting system. And if you see one revenue that is a positive number in there, it's because it's discounts, so it's a negative revenue, which is a debit. Which would be the, ad valorem discounts projected. Correct. So now you know you have all of these details if you want to look at them, talk about them. And I'd like to just look a little bit more to the future, towards our July, I need to correct that, our July capital budget workshop. And along the side, just to kind of give you a rule of thumb, if you were obviously not, most of these projects we're trying to pay for from grant funding, or we have some other committed money, Okaloosa Halfpenny or Town Center CRA money, right? But if you wanted to know, well, what would it cost per parcel? And I've just divided these total amounts by the 16,055 parcels that we have in our city. Just kind of have that as a reference point along the side. But this first slide here is, these are, every month I bring you the capital project status report. And one of the pages in there shows our 5-year capital plan, the one we adopted last year. The 5-year capital plan, these are the projects that are listed in our strategic plan. So these are the strategic goal numbers, and this is the amount that has been committed in our 5-year capital project plan. So that is the $79 million. Now this next slide, so this will get us partway there on a lot of these projects. Now this is the remaining amount of money that we would need to raise to truly accomplish those goals. These are just estimates. But for example, if we really wanted to buy land and start to build like you said, a few governmental buildings, maybe lay down a little infrastructure to encourage in the kind of development that we want. A lot of people estimate that that could be about $50 million. To complete the Crosstown Connector with this new exfiltration system that we want to put in so that we can put the park over it, I need to find another $6.8 million. We've got 3.3 committed by the Board of County Commissioners, but we're estimating it would be $10 million to complete the roadway with the new latest design. Undergrounding utilities, we have committed $43 million, which in today's present value, I could lend that out, those revenue streams out, and I could get about $27 million. So that'll definitely get us through phase one. If we wanted to go a little bit deeper into West Destin or wherever we're starting from, each phase we're looking at nowadays, we'll find out more in June, but I'm thinking of $18 to $25 million for the phases, given the inflation the way it's been. The Stallman US 98 crossing, as you all know, we really want to get people safely from the north side of 98 down to the south side, looking at underpass and overpass options and other things. That could be an investment of an additional $30 million. The city marina to develop one. All of these numbers, if we could have designs or surveys done, that would help us, pinpoint. But so these numbers, you just gotta, take them in the grand scheme of things. So keep this in mind. That would be another 150. So we've got the $80 million that's been committed. It would be another 150 really to see these things come to fruition.
Crystal, where did you get these numbers from?
Talking to engineers mostly.
On the city
engineering staff.
So our engineers can give good estimates on city marinas and city centers and things like that?
I've also, I've been working with some, our financial advisors work with municipalities statewide, so anybody who's done anything recently. Oh, here, the parking structure. So right now, in today's recent dollars, it costs about $30,000 per space. So that would, $4.5 million, that would be 150 new parking spaces. But yes, so I just talked to other financial advisors who work with other cities around the state to see what experience they have.
All right, appreciate it.
Yeah, within the last 24 months, there's another city of about our size that has started on a parking structure, and they're paying $30,000 a space.
Yeah, some of it's a little high. City Marina at 25, I believe is probably 10 million over, but all in all, estimates are probably pretty close.
And Ryan may know this. What was the cost to put the tunnel in out by 30 Avenue? And my two questions on that, because that's the Stallman salute in my mind. What was the cost and what was the cost share? Because I know the TDC put some money into that in Walton County, the county commissioners put some, but I also know FDOT put a lot of money into that project. So, I appreciate you doing this, but then it just becomes a problem solving, where do we find the revenue? Because none of this is going to be all just us, or most of this is not going to be just all us.
You're correct. So these are on our strategic plan, so these are things that we're always looking for grant funding for. And like you said, DOT, TDC. So that's just to keep in mind. Also keep in mind, when you're looking, maybe thinking about changing anything on our strategic plan, maybe you want to move something up the list and something down.
I'll just throw something out. I was talking to Commissioner Ponder. We got about 12 months left to start on the Crosstown, or people are going to start wanting their money back. So he kind of went to bat for us, trying to help us push the can down the road one more time. So I just wanted to let everyone know, and if you want to talk to him and get some more details, that's kind of the general of it all that my conversation was with him.
Yeah,
over
that's
across town.
fantastic. And we
What does
should.
that mean? I thought we're 100%. What are you
Well,
talking
we,
about?
I mean, we're basically
starting
there.
it?
Yeah, we're basically there. We got one parcel that we're still in negotiations with and to get shovel ready, basically. Yeah.
Parcel's under contract now.